Good morning and welcome to this webinar covering new features in TDL-hosted DSpace repositories. My name is Christy Park. I'm the Marketing Manager for the Texas Digital Library, and I'm joined by my colleague Ryan Steens, who is the Director of Operations for TDL, and we'll be talking a little bit later about the process and timeline for upgrades to TDL-hosted DSpace repositories. We'll be going over, as I said, new features in DSpace 4 that will be available as we upgrade our hosted installations. And we began preparing for this upgrade towards the beginning of the summer, not only with our in-house technical staff, but also with a working group made up of 4 members of Texas Digital Library from some of our member institutions who helped us test DSpace 4 in our environment and think about new features and what would be useful for the rest of our membership and what might be confusing, and they help us put together the content for this webinar. And I just want to name them very briefly. They are Cameron Kanersdorfer from UT Southwestern, Laura McElfresh from Texas A&M Galveston, Chris Starcher from Texas Tech, and Andrew Widener from the University of Houston. Effie Bradley, our Chief Technology Architect at TDL, also participated on this task force to put this event together. So as you know, DSpace is a product of DuraSpace, which is the international umbrella organization that provides a home for DSpace as well as several other open source software applications, including Fedora Commons and Vivo. And TDL hosts DSpace for many of its member institutions as an institutional repository application. We are also an active member of DuraSpace and provide resources to them, both financial and human, to support the work of DuraSpace and to support the continued health and development of DSpace. In the webinar today, we'll talk a little bit first about what you can expect out of the box from the new DSpace as we bring it up for each of our member institutions. So we'll talk about out-of-the-box changes that will be present in every DSpace installation, including some public user interface changes that any user who comes to the site, whether they log in or not, will see, and some administrative interface changes. We'll also talk about new possibilities, some optional features that require additional configuration and that we would communicate with each campus individually to decide on, but we want everybody to know that these options exist. And then Ryan will talk some about the upgrade process and timeline for that, and we'll finish up by talking about some additional resources and means of support for you as we move forward with the upgrades. First, we'll talk about the public interface. So these are changes to the theme, the look and feel of DSpace, as well as some new discovery tools and indexing enhancements that make content in the repositories more easily discoverable by Google and other search engines. First, we'll talk about the theme. So with these upgrades to DSpace 4, the Texas Digital Library is deploying a new responsive theme developed by Atmire, and it's called Mirage 2. The theme is built on some modern web technologies, including Bootstrap, and it results in a fresher look, more modern look and feel, improved support for mobile and tablet devices, so it's in a responsive design. And there are a range of optimizations under the hood that make it better. The Texas Digital Library is an early adopter of this theme, which is not yet part of the official DSpace codebase. However, we felt that the benefits of having a responsive DSpace website for our members made it a compelling addition to our default package as we are performing these upgrades. Another new feature or set of features with this upgrade include faceted searching and browsing capabilities. And this is something that probably looks familiar to you from sites like Amazon, where faceted searching helps you select the right product according to facets like price or brand. So with faceted searching, the search results are broken up into categories, typically showing the counts for each item or each search term. And it allows the user to drill down and further restrict their search based on those facets. So I'm going to look now at a live demo installation of DSpace so we can look at a couple of these things. You can see here the new Mirage theme with some TDL colors and the TDL logo. And you can see that if I change the size of the screen and squish it down, that it changes seamlessly into a format that will fit well and work well on a mobile device. You can also see over here on the right side of the screen, if I scroll down, the faceted search options. So I have search results broken down by author, by subject, and date issued, with terms associated with each category. I can use those terms to drill down into the content in the repository. So if I click on metadata, for instance, DSpace will give me the 5 results that all have metadata as one of their keyword subject keywords. If I wanted to restrict this list of search results farther, I could add another filter by clicking on another one of these facets, maybe archives, and this would restrict the search further to the 2 items in the repository that have both archives and metadata as subject keywords. The faceted search works by default, has author, subject, and date issued as the 3 categories that are available. However, DSpace can be configured to expose any number of metadata terms to be used in the faceted search. We'll go back to our slide set here and talk a little bit about some other discovery enhancements with DSpace 4 that have to do with the way Google Scholar indexes content in DSpace. So anybody who's analyzed traffic to their DSpace site has probably noticed that a large percentage of visitors arrive through commercial search engines like Google, Google Scholar, Yahoo, and Bing. And DSpace comes with tools that make sure that search engines can easily and effectively index that content. However, there's always room for improvement, and DSpace has worked directly with Google Scholar and at the request of Google Scholar to make some changes in this latest version that make it easier for Google Scholar to accurately index content, and these are 3 of them listed here. First of all, DSpace 4 makes it easier for harvesters, Google's harvesters, to find newly added content. So it exposes a browse by date accessioned view, which allows Google to see what has been added to the repository most recently. Secondly, DSpace 4 ensures that the date issued field is set more accurately. In the past, DSpace would automatically assign a date issued to any submitted content if a date wasn't manually supplied. And this was because DSpace was assuming that the date issued was the same day that the article was being published in DSpace, unless the submitter said otherwise. But this was causing lots of errors in the date issued metadata for content coming into DSpace, and this caused Google Scholar to produce inaccurate results. Finally, DSpace 4 makes it easier for Google Scholar to determine the primary file in an item by enhancing some of the logic in the HTML meta tags. Along with these changes, TDL strives to optimize discovery on all our hosted installations by following SEO best practices for our websites, including making sure DSpace is visible to search engines, enabling the sitemaps feature, which allows for efficient crawling, and ensuring that the robots.txt files allow access to splash pages and full text. And upgrading to the latest version is also an important method for making sure our sites are optimized for discovery through Google. So we'll move on next to talk about some of the default new features or changes in the administrative interface, so what users would see once they're logged in and have administrative access to parts of DSpace. These include some changes to the submission workflow, the ability to reorder files or bitstreams in items that have multiple files, and some new repository statistics. So first of all, there's a change in the way the submission workflow looks in DSpace 4. In older versions of DSpace, including the ones we currently host, the first step in any item submission workflow are these two initial questions about whether the item has multiple titles and whether the item has been published before. With DSpace 4, the DSpace developers removed these initial questions by default. They're still there and you can add them back. If you would like them back, you can ask us to reconfigure it. But by default, the initial questions are gone. And the reason for this has to do with those Google Scholar enhancements. Previously, if a user selected it had been published before, then they were provided with the opportunity to provide another date of initial publication. But if they didn't check that, then DSpace would automatically assign the current day as the date published or date issued, and that was causing a lot of errors. So DSpace removed these questions and now requires that users provide the date issued manually for every item submitted, and hopes that that will clean up some of those errors. So this is the old DSpace. In the new DSpace, with DSpace 4, a user submitting an item through the web interface would just begin with this description of the item, starting with the author and title. A second change in the administrative interface is the ability to easily reorder bitstreams into whatever order you would like for items that have more than one file associated with them. So we'll go ahead and look in the DSpace installation to see how this works. Go back home to the home page, and I'm going to search for an item that I know has multiple files. This one, called Open Access and Film, has 5 files associated with it, 5 pages, and I can see here that they're a little bit out of order and I would like to reorder them. If I scroll over, if I look on the right hand side and scroll down to the context menu and click Edit this item, and then go to the Item Bitstreams tab, the system will show me the 5 files available with this item. I can use the move up and down buttons on the right to reorder the items however I need to. So I'll move page 2 up into its rightful place. Click Return. And I can see now in the list of files that the items are in the correct order. A final set of new features in DSpace 4 involves statistics. So this screen may look pretty familiar to a lot of users of DSpace, and this involves usage statistics. So DSpace will show you how many views for an entire group of records, how many visits per month, and some geographical information about where users are coming from. And you can see these statistics, this set of statistics, at various levels in the repository. You can see it for the entire repository. If you're at the community level, you can see it for that community. You can see it for the collections, and then you can see it at the item level as well. So this is mostly unchanged for most users. It's still available. However, there are a couple of additional statistical views that are available with this upgrade, including some search query statistics that let you know what search terms users are deploying to get to content in your repository. And you can customize this view using a drop-down menu at the top of this screen to limit the statistics to the previous year or the previous 6 months or the previous month. There's also a view for workflow statistics, which show you how many workflow steps have been completed in your repository for various time periods. That's if you have workflow steps set up for any of your collections. Now we'll move on to talk a little bit about optional features that come along with this upgrade to DSpace. These are new capabilities in DSpace that will not be available by default as we upgrade, but they are available to you if you would like to work with us to set them up, and it's up to each individual campus to decide whether they would be useful to you or not. These features are listed here, and we'll go over each one of them in a little bit more depth. But just in summary, they include some embargo functionality. There's both a simple and an advanced embargo option, some interface translations, controlled vocabulary support for helping with standardizing subject, keywords, and other kinds of metadata during the submission workflow, a curation task for web services, the ability to create item versions, and the ability to offer a request a copy feature for users who would like to ask for access to content that has been restricted. We'll say this several times, but if you would like to ask questions or discuss or request any of these features, you can contact our help desk at support@tdl.org to set up some additional time to talk with us. First, we'll talk about the simple embargo. All of the embargo functionality involves the ability to restrict access to items in your repository until a specific date, after which the embargo is lifted and the content is available publicly. So with the simple embargo, you can restrict content until a specific date, and that restriction applies to the anonymous access group. And the anonymous access group is basically anybody who's not logged into DSpace. So it's a blanket embargo. There's really no flexibility in who has access other than only people who are logged in who are specifically granted access. Items under embargo are searchable unless they're marked private. So embargoed items will still pop up in search results. However, if a user clicks on the search result that's embargoed, they will be prompted to log in to be able to access the item. So we'll take a look at some screenshots to show what this looks like. If the simple embargo is enabled in DSpace, a workflow step called access is added to the item submission workflow for any item in the repository. And as you're submitting items, you'll be asked to provide a date on which an embargo would be lifted. You can also make the item private, which means it won't be searchable. So if you left all of this blank, no embargo would be placed on the item, and it would proceed through the any workflow steps to become publicly accessible in the repository without any kind of embargo. As I mentioned before, items that have an embargo placed on them are still searchable, so they will still pop up in search results. However, if we clicked on this item, which has an embargo placed on it, we would get a message that looks like this, saying that the item is restricted and asking us to log in to be able to access the item. So that's simple embargo. The main difference with advanced embargo, which is a separate kind of configuration, is that advanced embargo allows you to specify groups that have different levels of access or can access content on different dates. So with advanced embargo, you have additional flexibility to kind of layer delayed access to specific people or specific groups of people. And we do have a couple of different test sites that I'll communicate to you at the end of this presentation that have both simple embargo and advanced embargo set up on them, so you can kind of play around and see how the different functionality works with each one. Okay, next we'll move on to the controlled vocabulary support functionality that's new with this upgrade. DSpace now supports controlled vocabularies, which you can use to confine the set of keywords that users can select while describing items during the submission workflow. And of course, this is good in that it eliminates any ambiguity that comes with the free description system and consequently simplifies discovery. There is a default controlled vocabulary loaded with DSpace 4. It's the Swedish research subject categories taxonomy, and we'll take a look at that in a second. However, you can also add other taxonomies to the subject keyword category or any other field that's in the submission workflow as you see fit. Those controlled vocabulary taxonomies are described in XML and placed in the DSpace config file. So if you are interested in using this, you could contact us and we would work with you to develop that controlled taxonomy in XML and place it in the config file for your DSpace so that it would be there for users to select from. Okay, we'll take a look at this really quickly in our DSpace instance. I'm going to go ahead and start a new submission. I'll select a collection and I'll begin describing the item, and you'll notice that as we looked at before, those two initial questions don't pop up anymore. I just start with the description of my item. As before, DSpace will require that I have a title, and it also now requires that I enter the date of issue before I move on. So when I move into the next step, I'll see my subject keyword field here, and there's a link called Subject Categories that will provide me with the controlled vocabulary. And again, this is that Swedish research subject categories taxonomy. I can select from this list any keywords that I want to add. I can add multiple keywords if I want to, and from here I can move on through the submission workflow as normal. All right. With DSpace 4, we also have some capabilities for localization and internationalization support. So there are a number of languages included that can be configured with a DSpace repository so that the interface language and labels and things like that can be switched back and forth into different languages. So with these, all or most parts of the interface are translated. It kind of depends on the language, how thoroughly it's been translated, but you can see here that this repository has English, German, and French available, and users can toggle among those three languages to see the DSpace interface in each one. And there are a number of other languages available, including Czech, Estonian, Japanese, Polish, and several others that are available that could be included as part of your DSpace interface if you would like it to be. Another optional feature that comes with DSpace 4 is a new curation task accessed through the Curation Tasks link in the administrative links on the right-hand side of your DSpace screen. And if you'll remember, since DSpace 1.7, which is our current version, DSpace has had this curation task framework for building little Java plugins that perform routine administrative operations on content in the repository. There have historically been a couple of curation tasks included out of the box with DSpace, like the ability to run a check for required metadata across all content in the repository. And there's this new curation task available optionally in DSpace 4, the web services curation task. What this feature does is it provides you with the ability to look up and retrieve data from freely available APIs from other web services that provide their information freely or access to their information. So if you think about the metadata in a DSpace record, you know, it may include a number of identifiers or other values that are part of networked information systems. So for example, an item might include a DOI, which is a controlled identifier in the DOI registry. Or a journal article might include the ISSN of the journal in which it was published. So those numbers have very specific meaning and could be used as keys to retrieve other useful data through registries that expose their information through freely available APIs. And that's exactly what this web services curation task does. So the example that we tested in DSpace 4 involved querying Sherpa Romeo, which maintains a registry of publishers and has an API that lets other systems access its data in that registry. So if you have items like, say, a journal article that includes the ISSN in its metadata, you could use this web services curation task to access that registry in that database and have it return the publisher name associated with that ISSN, and then that publisher name would be automatically included in your DSpace record. So it's an interesting way to improve and add to the metadata that's included in your DSpace records by accessing publicly available information that's out there in other registries. Item level versioning is another new optional feature with this upgrade to DSpace 4. And this gives you the ability to create and maintain a version history, a publicly viewable version history of an item in DSpace. So if you have an item in DSpace and you need to withdraw, as in this example here, maybe you need to remove one of the files associated with that item but add a third file. The item level versioning allows you to do that and still maintain the original version while creating this new version, and all files would be maintained as part of that version history. It's important to note that only the most recent version of an item is available through the search interface. However, previous versions are visible and citable. They get their own DOI, or their own, handle, for instance, so that they're citable. And also important to note is that a new version of an item can only be created from the latest version. So it's very linear. You can't create version 3 from the original version. You can only create version 3 from version 2. So I'll go through just a very brief description of how this works. If item level versioning is enabled in DSpace, you will see a link called Create Version of this item in the context menu when you're looking at any given item. If you click that, you can give a reason for creating the new version, and then click Version. Once you do this, a new item is created in the submissions workflow. So a new version gets treated like any new submission, and then you go to the submissions workflow and find that new item and complete the submission for the new version. Once that process is completed, then you will have an item with a version history that looks kind of like this, and you can see at the bottom here that you have version 1 and version 2. Version 2 is the selected version or most current version, but you can still access and cite the original version of the item. One thing that's important to note here is that if you're using this versioning functionality, it does make the submitter name and email visible to all users. You can see it there under the editor column on this screen. And our final feature that we'll look at is the request a copy functionality. This was added to DSpace as a measure to facilitate access in cases when content that's in the repository can't be openly shared with the whole world immediately, but has been restricted. But it does give users a way to request access to the content, and that request goes to the original submitter of the item, who can then approve or deny access with the click of a button. So users can request a copy by clicking either on the file thumbnail or the blue lock symbol displayed on files that are restricted to them. And when they do that, they'll be given this request form that they can fill out and provide a reason for why they would like access. This email goes to the original submitter of the item, and that email also contains a link with a token that brings that original submitter back to a page where he or she can grant or deny access. So this is what that screen looks like. You can see that the original submitter can either agree to send a copy of the item to the requester or deny access to that. So once they've chosen one or the other, the system would generate an email going back to the requester, either providing the access or explaining why they can't have access to this item. So to briefly review, we have a number of features that will be available in any instance of DSpace 4 that the TDL hosts. These include that new responsive mobile-friendly Mirage 2 theme, faceted search and browse capabilities that let you drill down into the content and restrict the search results, some enhancements to Google Scholar and that make the content in DSpace more discoverable, the ability to reorder bitstreams in items that have multiple files associated with them, and some search query and workflow statistics that are new to DSpace 4. There are also some optional features that can be configured for use in DSpace that you can communicate with us about if you're interested in them. These include simple and advanced embargo functionality, the ability to offer different interface translations, controlled vocabulary support in the submission workflow, a curation task for web services, the ability to create and maintain multiple versions of an item, and the request a copy feature. Remember, to discuss or request any of these optional features, you can contact the TDL help desk at support@tdl.org for further discussion. If you're interested in testing out any of these new features before your DSpace is upgraded, we have a couple of different sites set up for you to do that. There is the demo site that I've been showing you in this webinar. That has simple embargo set up, as well as some interface translations and the controlled vocabulary support. We also have a different test site that has advanced embargo, as well as a few other things set up in it. And you can log into those and play around and test out these features using the login information shown here. There's also a DSpace demo site maintained by DuraSpace that I've also included on this slide. It does have simple embargo set up, as well as a number of additional customizations, some of which we haven't talked about here because they are relevant to older versions of DSpace. But if you explore in that demo site and find things you have questions about, you are more than welcome to contact us to talk more about them.
Hello, this is Ryan Steens. I am Director of Operations at Texas Digital Library. I'm going to talk a little bit about the timing, communication, and theming. We're going to be completing this project before winter break in fall of 2014. We're going to begin the process with the general membership after first working with 2 members to perfect the upgrade and theming process. Once we feel confident with actual production DSpaces, we will be moving on and alerting you where you are in the queue. This will continue throughout the fall. Once your upgrade is scheduled, members will have 1 week to review the site for functionality. Your entire review time won't be limited to 1 week, but we would like for you to do your initial review within that first week and get back to us with any notes you have regarding your upgrade. Any issues found will be worked through, and we will continue to work with you until the upgrade is made to your satisfaction. Members will have the option to decide whether they'd like to theme the site themselves or whether they'd like to have TDL theme their DSpace. We can do either option. All you have to do to get your site themed is send us the colors that you'd like it to be and a logo that we can use. If you'd like to theme the site yourself, we can set up a staging instance and you can work from there, and we'll provide some instructions for you. We are on the Mirage 2 theme. It is a responsive theme that works on both computers and mobile devices. It does have a different look and feel than the Mirage theme you may be used to. One of the things that this means is that not everything should be moved as if it were a static HTML page. We need to take things into consideration and how they'll move in relation to other elements of the page as the page grows and shrinks from device to device. If you have any questions at any time, don't hesitate to reach out to our team. We'll be in communication with you throughout the fall regarding the scheduling of your theming and the upgrade schedule, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. I just want to remind everybody that about the resources that are available to you as we go through this upgrade process. Again, we have the help desk that you can reach by email, web form, and phone. There's a little typo in the slide there. That 0 should be a hyphen. That is a toll-free phone number that you can use to reach us. There's also some pretty extensive documentation through DuraSpace and DSpace that I have linked here. We used that DSpace documentation pretty extensively in putting together this webinar, and it is a great resource that's available to you as well. And finally, I just want to thank again our DSpace 4 task force for all their work in putting together this webinar and in helping us prepare for the DSpace 4 upgrade. This recording will be available, as well as the slide set, through the TDL website and on YouTube. And again, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to get in touch with us. Thank you. Bye-bye.